This is, I go ahead and call this to order. Do we need to take roll? Because we're official. Okay, let's go ahead and take roll then, please.
All right, Joint Conference Committee for House Bill 1, March 26, noon recess. Representative Kinner.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Here.
Representative Schwartz. Representative Walters.
Here.
Senator Guru.
Here.
Senator Hicks. Senator Kinski.
Here.
Senator Steinmetz. Co-Chairman Nicholas. Chairman Perkins.
Whenever I get told. Here. Whenever I get back. All right, we're here to go back and review and make sure that we're all on the same page with respect to our agreement on the budget bill for the Joint Conference Committee report. So with that, we'll turn it over to Don Richards. Mr. Richards, you want to walk us through so we're gonna do it off of the sheets, which is kind of what we had before. We're gonna do that, and once we verify that, do you actually have a draft conference report for us?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay, so we'll go through this and see if we're close, and then we'll look at the conference report.
Okay.
Is it? Oh, it's already on. I'm sorry. I came and put a stack of papers on top of it, so that's my problem. So anyway, go ahead, Mr. Richards.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, members of the Joint Conference Committee, we would like to walk through the actual report after the summary sheet just to ensure our language interpretation was correct, and we do have a couple of points to raise with you. But moving quickly through the summary report, which is the large tabloid size materials, you will see that you adopted the House version of the identical amendment. And then moving to Senate second reading amendment number 21, we've highlighted in blue where you have made changes, especially eliminations. Starting at the top, you adopted the $30,000 and removed the footnote related to a JAC reduction of Governor's Office 200 series. You adopted the Senate position moving the clean coal technology funding from general funds to SIPA in the amount of $1.25 million. You did not decrease the $150,000 for the Veterans Memorial Museum, but you did modify the language to direct the agency to submit an exception request for this item in the succeeding fiscal biennium.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator?
Don, and I know this is subject to the final language that would be in the bill, but do we actually direct the agency? I thought there was language that we suggested or invited them to, but if we direct the agency, doesn't that kind of invite in the past, haven't we sustained vetoes because we were telling an agency what to do?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, you are correct with a couple of caveats. Number one, the language says it's the intent of the legislature. So whether or not he vetoes it, the future JAC will know what your thought was at the time. The language does actually direct an exception request, and that could be modified to say may submit an exception request if the committee so desires.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just thought we were using throughout the bill the language, it is the intent of the legislature, but
There's the official footnote.
let me see the official footnote. It is the intent of the legislature. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, moving on to the Department of Agriculture, the committee elected to remove one FTE to align with the governor's recommendation and approximately $73,000. You'll recall this is the large-scale inspection program in the Consumer Protection Division. There were no changes made on the State Parks and Cultural Resources side of the Veterans Museum footnote, as the change to the military department did not modify any of the language in the state parks. You did restore one position and make that general funds for the SLEDS position in the Wyoming Community College Commission. One quick note here, the full $108,288 is in their budget, but you as JAC had already restored $2,008. So you only needed to add back 106,000, just a little nuance there. The Joint Conference Committee eliminated the University of Wyoming reduction and subsequent transfer to the state aid in the Wyoming Community College. However, and that is noted at the bottom of the text that is struck here, you did adopt $8 million for UW and $8 million for community colleges. And arguably, this is quite related. And in fact, it is necessary to become between the two positions. You did not, or you removed the reduction of $70,000 in the Department of Education for the Talking Books program. And with respect to the next two items, you directed Fremont County School District number 25, which is Riverton, to proceed and require the State Construction Department to submit an application for federal American Rescue Plan funds, or ARP funds, for purposes of that capital construction project. You reduced the school capital construction appropriation in a like amount of $8.2 million, and subsequently reduced the SIPA money that would be transferred to the school capital construction account for that purpose. And then finally, Mr. Chairman, the committee elected to entirely eliminate Section 339, which was the Casper State Office Building Advisory Task Force, including the appropriation, and recall that is included in the capital construction bill, House Bill 121. The next item is item 4, House Second Reading Amendment number 1. You deleted the restoration of funds of $2 million for the veterans tax exemption. I'm moving on to the top of page 2. The committee deleted House Third Reading Amendment number 1, which was the capital case funding. That was a contingent appropriation and was not effective in any event because Senate File 150, which was the repeal of the death penalty, has failed. On the healthcare financing, excuse me, that was a transfer of funds from the healthcare financing to the Office of Public Defender. So moving down to item number 6, the law office, you adopted the restoration of 2 FTE positions, which JAC in January had removed. You deleted Senate Third Reading Amendment number 5 related to direction to the Cultural Resources Division of the State Parks and Cultural Resources to prohibit the expenditure of grant and aid payments for news services with some exemptions. You deleted and further amended House Third Reading Amendment number 4. Specifically, you did adopt the reduction of $16,755. That's for travel in the administration division of the agency. You also restored one position at $90,000, but you removed the final phrase of that footnote that indicated that the division shall not include less than 50 authorized employees within the division. You deleted House Third Reading Amendment number 14, which is item number 9, related to a fund swap from interstate streams to general fund, or excuse me, from general funds to water development funds for the purposes of interstate streams. Item number 10, you adopted the 2 studies in the Wyoming Geological Survey and modified the text of those footnotes to include hydrogen, but the committee deleted any funding or position associated with that. Moving on to item number 12, you deleted and further amended House Second Reading Amendment number 35, which was a restoration of primarily, but not exclusively, step 3 budget reductions within the healthcare financing division. Specifically, the committee denied restoration in public health and aging, but you approved almost the entire amount in healthcare financing, with the exception of $200,000 for chiropractic services. You also restored 1/2 of the 6% reductions for 4 different areas. As I recall, they were guardians, foster care, residential treatment centers, and group homes all experienced a 6% reduction, and the compromise position was to reduce that to a 3% reduction. Moving on to item number 13, You deleted Senate Second Reading Amendment number 20, which was related to the above, and restored $6.5 million to the Comprehensive Waiver Program, and took that money from the University of Wyoming State Aid in order to be cost neutral. If you move back up to item number 12, you will see the committee agreed to $6.1 million in restoration for the Comprehensive Waiver Program, so just slightly under what the Senate position was. Item number 14, the committee deleted Senate Third Reading Amendment number 8, and this was just a technical correction to the prior amendment, which was, I believe, a Senator Beitman amendment to ensure that this was not included in their ongoing budget. The committee deleted item number 15, House Second Reading Amendment number 9, and this was for the high-risk infant care in the amount of $225,000, again, deleted. The House, or the Conference Committee, approved item 16, which is Third Reading Amendment number 7, which provided $1.37 million for the Wyoming Home Services Program. Again, that's the senior home care program operated in the Department of Health. Item number 17, the committee deleted that, but the companion amendment on the House side, which is item number 18, was adopted. This is simply a technical corrections amendment, and given your prior action, the Senate's amendment had an extra dollar sign, so we didn't need that in the conference report. Item number 19, the committee approved House Second Reading Amendment number 10. This was a language-only amendment specifying that the Wyoming Business Council shall transfer the appropriate amount to the Department of Workforce Services for the operation of the Women's Council, and further specifying that the Wyoming Business Council include that transition in their upcoming biennial budget request. Item number 20 was a delete and further amend. This combined with Senate Reading Amendment number, Second Reading Amendment on the Senate side, number 21.01, and provided $8 million of funding for the Community College Commission and $8 million to the University of Wyoming. Upon visiting with the chairs and the maker of that motion, we also specified by footnote, which you will see in the report, that these are one-time amounts. Item number 21 was a delete and further amend. This was a reduction of $75,000 for environmental analysis or appraisals for potential land exchanges bordering the Medicine Bow National Forest. You will see in the committee report, we did make one change to the language in the footnote, and specifically it had previously indicated that the SLIB board, State Loan and Investment Board, had the oversight of this, and technically it is the Board of Land Commissioners. Same group of 5 people, just a different name. Item number 22, the committee adopted House Second Reading Amendment number 12, providing $500,000 for invasive species, weeds, on state lands. Item number 23, you also deleted and further amend, essentially combining a failed amendment on the Senate side as well as an adopted amendment on the House side relating to cryptocurrency. And I did want to mention a handful of changes to that, 3 of them, when we discuss the amendment, particularly as that language melds together. The amount doesn't change. It's still $4 million from SIPA. Item number 24, you adopted the House Third Reading Amendment number 26, which was a authorization of revenue bonds for the Bison Run Village apartments. Mr. Chairman, page 5 of 6 are either all deletes or delete and further amends, beginning with House Second Reading Amendment number 17, which restored 6 FTE in probation and parole in the Department of Corrections, but reduced the House appropriation position by half. You deleted and further amended the budget balancers and took the Senate provision and included a $5 million transfer from the Lsra at the end of the biennium if necessary. that allowed you to delete the House position, which would have provided $20 million transfer. That's item number 27. Item number 28 is a delete and further amend. This was a transfer of $30.5 million from the state penitentiary capital construction account, and half of those funds would be deposited into the PMTF corpus, Permanent Mineral Trust Fund corpus, and half of the money, or $15.25 million, would be deposited in the Common School Permanent Land Fund corpus. Item number 29, the committee deleted and further amended the disposition of the 1% severance tax. And you'll recall current law distributed that 50% to the PMTF and 50% to the Lsra. So the necessary amendment there was merely to change the Lsra portion to the permanent Common School Permanent Land Fund corpus. I think you're going to get some question on that. So the Senate position was to restore to current law, which would have been the Lsra. The House position would have deposited those into the reserve account. So clearly the two accounts were in dispute. The Joint Conference Committee elected to have a third account to resolve that dispute. They did not select one or the other, and in order to come to a compromise, elected to a third option. I guess that's within the purview of the committee and ultimately your floors to determine whether or not that's within the two positions.
And so it's not, so we have precedent for it and custom, if you will. Is that accurate?
Mr. Chairman, I believe it is. It's not quite the same issue as item number 28, where the Senate had no position, but that gives you a little bit more latitude to pick the accounts, which is what you did in item number 28. Since the Senate had no position, you had wide latitude to identify an account.
Well, I mean, in prior appropriations conference committees, we've done it before.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, I believe the committees have done that. And if you'd like, we can spend some time identifying that.
I just want to be able to defend it, and if someone brings it up. So.
Thank you. And I guess also, Mr. Co-Chair, and Mr. Richards, I mean, we look at the uses and what we've done with appropriations in and out of and from the 1% severance tax account. We've put that in various savings accounts before as well. Is that not correct?
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely correct. This would be the first time that it would be deposited in the Common School Permanent Land Fund, but you're absolutely right. A variety of different accounts have benefited from this.
Okay. Thank you.
Item number 31 and third reading amendment number 12. Items number 31 and 32 were both deleted. They are both related to the creation of an Educational Programs Advisory Task Force. Item number 33 was deleted, and I believe the CARES Act funding is being addressed in other legislation. Finally, Mr. Chairman, on the last page, page 6, item number 34, 35, and 36 are all related to CCUS, or carbon capture, utilization, and storage. You'll ultimately, the committee elected to proceed with Senate third reading amendment number 13 as written. And this provided $10 million appropriated to the governor's office, but the selection and review and oversight coming from the Wyoming Energy Authority. House second reading amendment number 22 was also actually 22, House third reading amendment number 11, and House third reading amendment number 24. All three of those relate to the maximum reserve balances. All three of them were deleted, and they had to do with the maximum balance in the PMTF reserve account, the Common School Permanent Land Fund reserve account, the Excellence in Higher Education reserve account, and the Hathaway Endowment Student Scholarship Endowment reserve account. Finally, Mr. Chairman, item number 40, the committee deleted a report regarding the status of the Human Resources Consolidation of Personnel.
Okay. Any questions or comments? All right, so you're going to take us into the actual report itself?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And the first thing I have is a cheat sheet. This is often requested. It's a one-pager, and it has some highlights.
That's Representative Nicholas's lasting legacy to the Appropriations Committee, a one-pager.
I believe you folks have that. You can also look at the official report, and you'll see that there is no explanation of the amendments that were adopted and deleted. So unless a senator or representative is careful in recalling what number their amendment was, this, while not part of the formal record, is a handy tool to quickly describe which amendments were adopted and deleted. I'll just, because we walked through the summary sheet, I will just discuss the first 9, which were all adopted. You adopted the language on the Wyoming Women's Council funding, no dollars associated with that. The Joint Conference Committee adopted the $500,000 for invasive species weed control, which was a House position. The Conference Committee adopted House Second Reading Amendment number 26, which added 3 FTE to the State Treasurer's Office and associated funding. And there's a note here that that was also identical to a Senate position. You adopted House Second Reading Amendment number 28, which was a restoration of 2 FTE in the Attorney General's office. You adopted House Third Reading Amendment number 25, which was the Technical Corrections Amendment. And you adopted House Third Reading Amendment number 26, which were the revenue bonds for the Bison Run apartments. You'll note that there were 6 amendments adopted on the House side, just 3 on the Senate side. However, on the House side, one of those was an identical amendment and another one was a technical corrections. It could have just as easily been Senate amendments. The 3 Senate amendments you approved
I
include.
admit that. Thank you, Don. That makes me feel so much better. You have Harity? Harity. Okay.
Senate Second Reading Amendment number 7 restored the 2 studies in the Wyoming Geological Survey. Senate Third Reading Amendment number 7 restored the funds for the Wyoming Home Services from the Lsra. That's the Senior Services Program. And you approved Senate Third Reading Amendment number 13, which would have provided or did provide $10 million from the Lsra for the CCUS, or carbon capture, utilization, and storage. We've also highlighted in the delete columns which of those were delete and further amend, which in many cases, for example, I won't go through all of these, but Second Reading Amendment number 17 from the House side, you restored all 6 positions, you just cut the money in half. If it's not highlighted and it's in that delete column, it has entirely been removed. We can provide that to your floors or not as you decide. Then, Mr. Chairman, going to the large report, on page 2 of the report, page 1, lines 10 and 11 are simply modifications to the bill title. Striking the advisory task force and noting the creation of a cryptocurrency staking program. Page 4, lines 4 and 5, restore the 200 series from the governor's office in the amount of $30,000. Page 4, line 10, moves the clean coal technology funding from from general funds to SIPA funds. I will note that there is a technical point here. You've also seen that we're underlining the term clean coal technology. So that is why that is appearing in there. Page 5, lines 17 through 20. That is the footnote related to the $30,000 restoration of the 200 series in the governor's office. Page 15, lines 10, 11 through 14, and 15 all relate to the Veterans Memorial Museum. And that is the language that Senator Kinski mentioned previously, that we did indicate it is the intent of the legislature. Page 18, line 9 is a elimination of the funding for the Department of Agriculture FTE related to the large-scale inspection program. And on the top of page 3, the decrease of 1 full-time position on page 19, line 2, is the actual deletion of the authorized position. Page 26, line 5, the decrease of $16,755 relates to the travel budget of state parks and cultural resources, which was a partial pay for lines 7, 8, and 23, which was the restoration of 1 state parks and cultural resources personnel. Page 28, line 24, this is where we strike the last sentence regarding the total number of authorized positions. Page 37 through the balance of this amendment, through the balance of page 3 rather, is the Larson amendment. This is the restoration of $12 million, and it's specified 1.5 for out-of-home placement at the bottom of page 3. Then top of page 4, optional services for adult Medicaid, comprehensive waiver services is in subparagraph 3. And in, paragraph 3, and in paragraph 4, that is a restoration of step 3 cuts for adult services in Medicaid. Pages 43, line 8, 9, 11, and 18 all relate to the Larson amendment in DFS, restoring 1/2 of the funding for foster care subsidies, adoption and guardianship, group home rate reduction, and residential treatment centers. Page 49, line 5, near the bottom of the page, is the restoration of 1 employee and $106,000, because there's already $2,000 in there for the Community College Commission SLEDS position, State Longitudinal Educational Data System, SLEDS. Page 49, line 7 is the $8 million contribution to Community College Commission state aid. And at the top of page 5, you will see the increase of that 1 full-time position previously discussed. And then the new footnote appears on page 50 after line 4. This notes that the $8 million is one-time and shall not be included in the Community College Commission's standard budget for the next biennium. They can certainly have the opportunity to include that as a exception request. Page 51, line 4 and 5, and after line 18, all relate to $250,000 for administrative and compliance costs related to land exchanges or sales. I did want to point out again, we made a change in the middle of that paragraph and eliminated Office of State or State Loan and Investment Board and substituted it with the Board of Land Commissioners. That's a technical point. On page 56, lines 4 and 5 is the restoration of $8 million for the University of Wyoming. And you will see footnote number 10, which is noted on page 63 after line 11, has the same language as the Community College Commission, indicating a one-time payment. At the bottom of page 5, page 66, line 15, is the Department of Corrections funding for up to 6 FTE. And on the top of page 6, you will see those 6 FTE. Page 96, lines 2, 3, and 4 are all conforming or introductory language for the section 300s. They have no substantive value. Page 96, lines 11, 12, and 13 modify the transfer from the SIPA account to the school capital construction account and make the reduction of $8.2 million due to the removal of the Riverton High School auditorium. Page 97, after line 10, subsection O provides the $5 million year-end balance.
Don't forget this one.
Subsection P relates to the state pen distribution of funds, 50% to the PMTF, 50% to the Common School Permanent Land Fund. On page 7, these are the changes in the school capital construction. We had to bring in this language. So this is language adopted in 2020, and then you'll see the strike and replace where we've taken out Riverton Auditorium, and we've replaced it by creating a new subsection J, directing the State Construction Department to submit an application for ARP funds. Page 99, lines 8 through 26 relate to the OPSTA account. And the only substantive provision there is, rather than putting half of it into the Lsra, you'll see half of it goes to the Common School Permanent Land Fund. A continuation of that same concept appears on the top of page 8. Pages 100, 101, and 1 through 104 is a elimination of the Casper State Office Building Advisory Task Force. Finally, actually close to finally, is the Wyoming cryptocurrency staking program. And I do, as I mentioned, wanted to point out 4 changes for your approval. At the bottom of page 8, starting with that sentence that says, "The state treasurer shall make transfers."
Can we back up just a little bit, Don, so when we go to the bottom of page 7, where we put the 50% into the Common School Permanent Land Fund account, and then we see that over Romanet 2 on page 8. We didn't need to do that for the PMPF because it's already in the budget. Is that correct?
That's correct. So this language, B, had a 1 and a 2, and the 1 already says 50% to the PMTF.
All right, I just want to clarify. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the University of Wyoming cryptocurrency staking program, I did want to draw your attention to the bottom line there, which provides direction as to the transfers of funds. Because cryptocurrency donations are permitted under this, we use the identical statutory language to accept any regular donation to the university. So if you donate stock to the university, that is valued at the time the transaction occurs. Due to the volatility of current cryptocurrencies, the same language is included here, where the matching is determined at the top of page 9 based on the value at the fair market value at the time of the donation. So that's an inclusion to specify. Also in subsection B, the original amendment on the Senate side called this an advisory committee, and this has been changed to advisory council because it is comprised of both legislators and non-legislators. So we typically call committees if they're entirely legislators, and councils or task force if they include members of the public. And then finally, in subsection C, we've provided for a review of this advisory council, and after that review, submit to the governor for approval. The language in the Senate side had after a review and approval, and unfortunately, an approval by an advisory council of non-elected individuals is arguably a inappropriate delegation of power. So the governor basically has the final say. And then finally, at the top of page 10, this was your amendment. You wanted that report to go to JAC and have top billing on that report, and that is provided there. Mr. Chairman, I have 2 more comments, and my first is I'm happy to walk through the today's white rod or fiscal profile or not. And then secondly, we do have final copies of the report unless there are any changes here. But I would ask whether or not it's possible for you to sign that on Monday morning. The reason being is we're actually drafting the bill as we speak, other staff who are not here. And every so often we will find a conflict or something when we're building the bill. We can have it signed today and we're ready to do that. But if you're, and especially if you're not going to be here Monday morning, if there are any members in that situation. Alternatively, we would like to work on it this weekend.
So what I would suggest is we can sign it, and then you can either keep the back page or you can have us re-sign. That work?
That would be fine.
And do we sign it a different color?
Yes. And I will actually circulate this around while we can continue. And I obviously will track down the members who are not here.
I think they signed. I'm not sure they use the right colors.
I have proxy signatures for all
Sure.
Does it matter what color I use?
Mr. Chairman, no, and apologies for the direction. We do need 2 signed copies, and at least 1 member on each copy must be in a different color.
Can I use green?
You get rid of Representative Schwartz.
So are you going to move to the white rod?
If you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Mr. Chairman, and we do have the larger tabloids of this, if there is any member who so desires.
I would also like to ask if that is finished, or we need to continue with the JCC portion.
I think the explanation is continuing.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else need a life size one? Please.
Mr. Chairman, with respect to the white rod or the golden rod, which will be available to all members on Monday, and this might change a little bit depending upon the action on the floor today. I'm going to point out some key numbers on this because if we don't discuss it here, your colleagues may ask some challenging questions. So I'm not taking sides here, but there are some oddities that show up that your colleagues may ask about. So for purposes of education, if we move to the general fund on page 2, line 32 illustrates the total amount of cuts. Cuts are shown in positive because it's a cut of a spending. And you will see that under column P, which is the JAC position, the JAC cut $445 million. The House restored about 16 million.
Line what? 32?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, and you'll see the JAC cut $445 million, which was $1 million different than the governor. Not much change. And then you will see moving to the right, the House position restored some of those cuts and ended up with about $17 million of total cuts, less than the JAC position. Then moving further to the right, the Senate actually cut deeper by about $1 million to $1,200,000. You cut more than the JAC did. And then in column V, you will see the final amount is about $1 million higher than the House. So the reason I point this out is I suspect that there's one or more members on the Senate side that will take a look at this line and say, wow, the conclusion is much closer to the House position than the Senate position. I'm not pointing that out for any other purpose than to prepare you for the response.
Well, and that's almost entirely due to the ARP bill.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I would say that that's almost entirely due to $16 million for higher education.
Right.
8 and 8. And that's about the difference between 445 million and 429 million. All of the rest of the stuff, whether it was for state lands or additional reductions in state parks and cultural resources, all of that essentially nets out, except for the higher education component. It's my observation that the counter to that, and this is just my observation, is the Senate side largely prevailed on funds that are not showing up on the profile. That is permanent savings, permanent mineral trust fund, and common school permanent land fund. I just wanted you to have an explanation if your colleagues asked. If you move over to the page 3, and if you move to line 14, line 14 means how much of the budget balancer, which this committee ended up at $5 million, did you need to use? So line 14, column V, you can see $2.4 million, and that's a positive. So we needed to use $2.4 million. And that's entirely due to an amendment from yesterday of $3 million related to school capital construction. That could change, you know, depending on the amendments that the Senate approves or does not. No, the $2.4 million is the total of all of the bills we've overspent the general fund, and we needed $2.4 million from Lsra. That number will change on literally a daily basis. And before.
And the 3 million, Don, that's the, remember we killed the $6.5 million study for the, for what's in suitability. So what we did is we amended it, took out the suitability, because that's what went from the prior study, which was about 2.5 million. It brought it from 6.5 million down to 3 million. So, but statutorily, we have to do the study, so we're doing it cheaper without suitability. So you'll see that when it comes over.
And I don't mean to point, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to point out, you know, one particular bill. The day before, we had a swing going the opposite direction when the Senate did not adopt the election bill requiring runoffs. That actually saved money on the profile, about $750,000, as I recall. So this will change on a daily basis. Mr. Chairman, I'd also like to draw your attention to line 47 on page 3. And this is the total spending from the Lsra. And you can see JAC is blank because you did not have any spending in the budget bill from the Lsra. And then the House status, they spent $28 million. The Senate spent $11 million from Lsra, and the conference committee ends up at 23. So pretty much more in the middle than the general fund example. Then if you drop down on the SIPA account, I think there were some questions relative to House Bill 121, and I know that's not the purpose of the conference committee here, but House Bill 121, which appears on line 84 under SIPA, that is going to reflect the Senate position because that is not a mirror bill, and that is what the Senate is currently working on. So the House position is not reflective of how it left your body. Mr. Chairman, there's one more item I'd like to draw your attention to, and that appears on page 4, line 78. Again, this will illustrate the differences between JAC, House, and Senate. And you will see that the JAC cut $800,000 in the school capital construction account. The House sustained those cuts at the same amount. And then the Senate cut about $11.5 million. And to Senator Guru, that's where the 10 Sleep and Riverton High School appear. And you will note that the JCC status in this case is much closer to the Senate position than the House position. So each account is a little bit different, and that general fund looks very favorably on the House position. The state capital construction account looks very favorable toward the Senate position. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We skunked them. That's right. So, Thank you. Are there any further questions? Go ahead, Representative Stiff.
Mr. Chairman, just a question for Mr. Richards. So the OPSTA money does not, because it's now going into permanent funds, it does not appear on the white rod. Is that correct?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. And that is probably the largest, not probably, it is the largest single amendment in this. And it doesn't appear here because we don't track revenue and expenditures. There can't be any expenditures from a permanent fund.
Any follow-up, Representative Stiff? So I've got a question for you. I think that begs a very interesting question. So when we come back and we start talking about MOEs, means of effort, means of equity, and total state spending, I'm assuming that deposits into the corpus of the trust fund, are they state spending or are they just simply savings, or does that have any effect on?
It's savings to savings.
I would think, but.
Mr. Chairman, in our calculations, we do not count them as appropriations or spending.
Okay.
And that's partly why we use the terminology transfer in that section 300. Or we sometimes will say shall direct as follows. And this actually did come up. It's been a few years, a couple of administrations ago. We used to say appropriate. There is appropriated 30 million from the state pen account to PMTF. And then the issue came up, well, all appropriations are subject to flex authority in B11. And the governor said, well, that is part of our flex authority. So we have purposely not included that as appropriations.
I remember that. Thank you. I remember that now. It's you have to get, sometimes you just have to hand it to a governor and his staff or her staff who are incredibly enterprising. So any other questions, members? And that's intended as a backhanded compliment, Manny. So anyway, any other questions at all? Okay, well, with that, and there's nothing else for the good of the order, we'll go ahead and adjourn the Joint Conference Committee. And thank you again to the House members and staff and